Alright, coming in at number 10 we have Kyle Rayner gets the cold shoulder. If a villain can't take down a hero, usually the first thing they go for are their loved ones. I mean, they usually are way weaker than the hero, and it's one of the only ways you can hurt them emotionally. And an emotionally unstable hero is easier to take down than someone who is clear-headed and focused. And Kyle Rayner would learn this the hard way. After flying around in space, saving the universe from all the strangest things in the galaxy, you think he would be ready to see it all. I mean, what on earth could be more shocking than meeting a race of aliens hell-bent on destroying the universe? Well, how about finding your girlfriend stuffed in a fridge? That's right, one of the greatest Green Lanterns would come home to find his girlfriend murdered and compacted right next to the condiments. That is definitely going to make it hard to love again. Coming in at number 9 we have Batgirl's got some bad manners. Swearing in comics is nothing new, but for a lot of the most popular DC characters you will never see this pop up on the page because the comics need to be sold to a wide range of readers. Which is kind of strange because you can totally have people getting their heads smashed in until they're unconscious, but no curse words. Well, in one of the issues of All-Star Batman and Robin the Boy Wonder, Batgirl screams out, "Sell your poison someplace else, this arcade belongs to the effing Batgirl." Now this shouldn't have been a big deal as the people at DC blacked out the lettering so you couldn't see what Batgirl was saying, but you could put the pieces together in your head. That's not the shocking part. The shocking part is that the blacking out of the lettering on many of the issues wasn't dark enough and most of the readers could make out what she was saying. So this was a huge screw up for DC and they had to recall a ton of the comics and put new versions on the shelves that had the swear words completely blacked out. Coming in at number 8 we have Starfire gets too sexy. Now it's no surprise for female characters to be over-sexualized in comic books, but for this particular example it was so blatant that Starfire fans were up in arms about this. I first got introduced to Starfire in Teen Titans, and she seemed to be like a clueless alien girl who had some pretty intense powers. In the comics she was a pretty interesting character, well, until they spruced her up for the New 52. And by spruced her up I mean they gave her some massive boobs and basically made her the horniest character in the Justice League. The center point of the new character was all about sexy, and it seemed that she was walking around trying to hook up with every last attractive person with a pulse. Since then the character has been reworked to embrace her sexual side with a little bit more taste by having her come from a homeworld where monogamy isn't a thing. That sounds like a great place. But when the character first changed people were feeling a little fiery.
Number 7. Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor. The DCEU has had its fair share of dealing with fan backlash, especially when it came to the film Batman vs Superman. Love it or hate it. I feel like there are people that have strong opinions about that film. But one of the worst things to come out of that film for most people was the decision to cast Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor. Eisenberg playing Lex as a casting choice was pretty much criticized by fans from day one, and it didn't get any better when the trailer was released or later when the film followed. Eisenberg was labeled as being too young for the role and was also considered not intimidating enough. Lex is a powerful force to be reckoned with, a brilliant, confident mind, a man with a big ego, and a man who's established. Like, this is Superman's ultimate foe here. Jesse Eisenberg's portrayal to many fans lacked in every single category when it came to Lex. To make matters worse, one thing Eisenberg did not lack in the role: hair. He had a big messy mop of it, while Lex is iconically known for being bald. He's so iconic for it, like he even at one point blamed Superman for his own baldness in the comics. It's a story point. That's how big it is of a deal.
Coming in at number 6, we have who actually created Batman. If you go back through Batman's history, you usually find that a lot of people always say Bob Kane was the person who made Batman, that it was all his idea and he was the only dude who came up with all the amazing features that we know and love as the Dark Knight. Well, that's actually not true at all. Bob was the artist who created the look of Batman, which is arguably the least important part of the character. Yeah, he did make the dude look super cool, but Bill Finger was the mind behind making most of the important pieces of Batman, like the Batmobile, the different gadgets, Robin, and even the Joker. And who would Batman be without the Joker? And the writer is technically the one who came up with the idea of the character, not to discredit the artist, but we understand the difference. Well, why is it that everyone remembers Bob Kane as the guy who created Batman? Well, because he forced the people at DC to sign a contract that said he was the sole creator of Batman. So going back to the history, it's revealed that this dude was kind of a
Number 5. Lois Lane lives. Speaking of Batman vs Superman, whenever the two cross paths, it's usually a pretty epic time. So after Lois was poisoned by the Joker in Action 17, released in 1996, 2 years after I was born, so old, Superman is faced with the toughest choice. Joker had made it so in order to cure Lois from the poison, Superman must kill the clown prince of comedy himself. Batman reminds Superman of the tremendous guilt that he felt after he killed the Phantom Zone villain in the Pocket Universe. So we got ourselves a situation. So Superman makes the hard choice but to let Lois Lane die. The Joker laughing all the while. So after her supposed death, she lets out a large gasp of air. The Joker starts laughing. So Superman and Lois now both have to deal with the fact that Superman would rather let the love of his life be killed rather than kill the Joker. See, the Joker's always strapped. He's always got a plan. It's tough times, man. Sometimes you just gotta take the L.
Coming in at number 4, we have Joker wears his own face. You have to give it up to the writers over at DC. The Joker has been in their stable of characters since the beginning, and they find ways to keep making him crazier. Like the time he had the doll maker cut off his own face and then he vanished for a year. Then he would re-emerge by breaking into Gotham PD and stealing his face back and hooking it back on with some staples, clips, and bungee cords. Talk about making an entrance. You disappear for over a year, then you come back to Gotham, kill a bunch of cops, and staple your own face back on. Bravo.
Number 3. Controversial Batman artwork. DC recently created an uproar when it posted and then subsequently deleted artwork promoting an upcoming Black Label series by Frank Miller titled Dark Knight Returns: The Golden Child. The image appeared to show Batman tossing a Molotov cocktail and featuring the words, "The future is young." This image was posted to both DC's Instagram and Twitter accounts, and eventually made its way to the Chinese social media site Weibo. Many felt the image was a reference to the ongoing protests in Hong Kong, and those who were against the protests started to speak out, encouraging a boycott of DC Comics, saying that posting the image meant that DC was taking the side of the protesters. DC responded by simply removing their posts featuring the artwork. Deleting the posts in turn led to backlash from fans who felt DC was backing down and basically allowing themselves to be bullied into surrendering their right to have an opinion at all, to their freedom of speech, all because of money. In other words, people felt like they were really selling out and bowing down to Chinese communism, which people have opinions about. Anyways, we'll get into that, but it's a thing.
Coming in at number 2, we have Rorschach Goes Boom. The Watchmen still stands as one of the greatest comic book stories ever told. The social commentary on the Cold War timeline that is completely changed by the fact that an all-knowing super being is living in America, and you have a mystery that keeps everyone's head spinning until the last minute. Well, this all builds up when eventually the truth is out that Ozymandias orchestrated an attack on American soil to kill thousands of people and made it look like it was Dr. Manhattan. This way the human race would have a common enemy, and this would prevent nuclear war between America and the Soviets. The idea behind this is killing thousands would save billions. Well, Rorschach is one of the only characters in the book that has a solid moral compass, and he refuses to let the unjust go unpunished and sets out to tell the truth. But Dr. Manhattan sides with Ozymandias, seeing his plan as salvation, and in order to keep it in motion, he obliterates Rorschach into little pieces. And coming in at the number 1 spot, we have Barbara Gordon getting shot. To this day, this is one of the most controversial moments in comics. You have Barbara Gordon just chilling in her house. There's a knock at the door. She's like, oh, who could that be? She answers the door, and before she can say, why is the Joker dressed like Jason Segel and forgetting Sarah Marshall, she's getting shot. The bullet would go into her spine, putting her in a wheelchair because she lost the use of her legs and could no longer go out into the field as Batgirl. This created an interesting new element to her character when she became the Oracle, but her getting shot wasn't even the most graphic part of this encounter with the Clown Prince of Crime. He then assaults Barbara, takes explicit photos of her, and puts them into a horrifying funhouse which he subjects her father to try and make him go insane. Yeah, I think it's safe to say that that was extremely shocking and none of us saw that coming.
Number 10. Joker kills Randall. Okay, in the 2019 Joker movie, written and directed by Todd Phillips, We have Arthur Fleck in his apartment before his big TV gig on the Franklin Murray Show later that night. He's then joined by his former colleagues Randall and Gary. They came in, just to check on the guy. They used to work with him, old friends. Let's do it. They question his face paint right off the bat by asking if he got a new gig or if he was planning on going to the rally. Arthur's like, no, my mom died, so I'm just celebrating. Okay, that's one way of celebrating a death. Randall then asks a few questions pertaining to recent crimes. So Arthur, getting a little bit, curious, keeps the conversation going a bit, stalling as he pulls out a knife from behind him. And then, out of nowhere, stabs and kills Randall. Also, Gary was there, so it made us believe that nothing bad was gonna happen. Because, Arthur liked Gary. Who doesn't like Gary? And also, Gary at this point is out of the loop. So his shock of what just happened with the whole situation is kind of doing the talking for us. He's terrified of what he just saw, asking Arthur, why did he just do that? And his answer was, do you watch the Franklin Murray Show? Yeah, I'm gonna be on it tonight. The scene is chilling because he assures Gary so well that he can go free. Even at one point pretending to lunge at him as he walks by, just to be funny. This scene is one of those scenes where you can't help but chuckle in fear. Like your jaws drop and you're like, huh, what is happening right now? You were the only one that was ever nice to me, Arthur says, before giving Gary a kiss on the forehead and sending him on his way. How lovely, I think. Number 9, the Lazarus Pit. So to save the world, you must save the life of your greatest enemy. Those are the words from Alfred as he and Batman prepare to toss Joker into the Lazarus Pit in Batman Legends of the Dark Knight issue 145. Using the purest water on Earth, Batman plans on tossing Joker into the Lazarus Pit to question him on the whereabouts of Talia and Ra's al Ghul. Knowing that the waters are capable for turning people sane for a brief amount of time, they plan to get Joker to spill the beans on the location in that moment. What a good plan, let's do it. So, while he's in the water, Alfred pulls out a gun to protect himself, but it's deemed unnecessary as Joker awakens. With his sanity? Yeah, it worked. And after a few confusing minutes of being awake, Joker tells the pair where they may be hiding. What do they do with the Joker? Well, they bring him along, of course.
The 3 best friends that anybody could have. We're the 3 best friends that anyone could have. We're the 3 best friends that anyone can have. And we'll never, ever, 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 ever leave each other.
Yeah, now that song is going to be stuck in your head as well. You're welcome. This moment was shocking because we find Joker reflecting on those who he's killed in the past. The dead, the dead. Sanity, such a burden, as Joker says. You can say that again. It's quite the burden. Number 8, dinner is served. In Death of the Family, issued October 2012, we find the Joker wearing a mask of his own face? Yeah, that's right, he used his face as a mask to cover his face. So he used a face mask to cover his face, which was the mask, so, The mask wasn't even good either. It was loose and flappy, and it was made of his rotten flesh. Kind of like old bologna. That was a gross image, sorry about that, last one. So what did he even do in the first place? Well, that's the point. While Batman was restrained to a chair, Joker had threatened to ignite the place up using gasoline. What a sticky situation. Literally, because his face. Okay, that was the last one, I swear. And just then, Alfred enters. Oh, thank God, a familiar face. But he's under the control of flesh-faced Joker. Never mind. The Joker then reveals that in front of all of Batman's allies, who are also at the nightmare dinner table, is their faces. What would you do if you woke up to this? Faint? Me too.
Coming in at number 7, we have WEINER Tentacles. Staying in the realm of the New 52, we're going to talk about the Swamp Thing, one of the quietly most powerful characters in the DC universe. And every time I see one of the covers from this comic, I get the feeling that I'm looking at a poster from a 1950s monster movie, in a good way. And the cover of issue 11 was no different. You have Swamp Thing carrying his loved one through a barrage of tentacles that seem to be attacking her. The only problem is the tentacles looked a little bit like wieners. A lot of fans started commenting about how the tube-like appendages looked a lot like those things that dangle between a dude's thighs, and it didn't help that these tentacles were a peach color, so they very much looked like a skin tone. This was so much of a problem that the comics had to be recalled and the artwork reworked. This was one of the funniest mistakes I have ever heard of.
Number 6, Martha Wayne. Come again? Alternate universes are fun, Flashpoint specifically. So in this universe, Flash's mom is still alive, right? But other weird paths have happened in this universe to get to that point. So things are a little different in big ways. So in this universe, Bruce Wayne is the one who got shot, not his parents. Oh nice. So Thomas Wayne ends up becoming the Caped Crusader using guns and a splash of more violence, while Martha Wayne takes on the mantle of the Joker. That's right, she immediately goes nuts after the death of her son and starts slashing up her own face, taking on the look of the Joker almost immediately. She knows Thomas Wayne, now Batman, would never kill her, so she uses that against him in the storyline. We actually caught a glimpse of this in the opening credits of Batman vs Superman released in 2016. Didn't anybody else find it odd that Lauren Cohen and Jeffrey Dean Morgan played Bruce Wayne's parents for such a small amount of screen time? They were pretty big actors and were even bigger at the time. Well, it was revealed that a Flashpoint movie has since then been in the works, so hopefully we get to see Zack Snyder's dream of casting Jeffrey Dean Morgan as Batman, and even better, hopefully we see Lauren Cohen taking on the role of Joker. She would probably get an easy Oscar nomination for it. I'll call it now. Check that date. I'm calling it.
Number 5. Where is Oracle? When the Birds of Prey film was announced, fans of the superhero team were understandably excited. Birds of Prey is the second most successful female-led comic series to have existed at DC, only being surpassed by Wonder Woman when it comes to sales. So despite the fact that Birds of Prey doesn't have a huge place in pop culture outside of the comic book world, it still has a sizable fan base within the comic book community. So when the film was announced, but with Harley Quinn at the helm, being the one responsible for bringing all the team's heroes together, a lot of people were understandably outraged. Harley Quinn has worked alongside the team of heroes maybe once or twice before, but she is in no way known for being their leader in the comics. In the comics, it is Barbara Gordon, under the guise of Oracle at the time, who managed to bring the group together. She is actually one of the main members and one of the founding members of the team, and yet when it came to the cast, there was no trace of Barbara Gordon to be found or mentioned. No Oracle, no Batgirl, no Babs whatsoever. For many, this was a deal breaker, and though I personally think they managed to make the film work surprisingly well even without a Babs, a lot of fans were disappointed that she would not be appearing.
Number 4. The Killing Joke. Batman the Killing Joke, released in 2016, also made into a feature-length animated film, is one of my favorite storylines. Let me explain why. So, after the Joker had escaped Arkham Asylum, his first stop was to hit up Commissioner Gordon's house, obviously. Barbara unfortunately had to answer the door. God. So Joker fires a bullet that ended up paralyzing her below the waist. And after taking some pretty messed up photos of Barbara, Joker kidnaps Commissioner Gordon and forces him to go on a ride in this messed up amusement park that he's brought him to. And the ride isn't that much fun because as the ride goes on, Gordon is forced to see these horrible photos of his daughter taken from that night. What an absolute nightmare. I've been on roller coasters, but none have been that scary, I don't think.
Coming in at number 3, we have Sue Dibney and Dr. Light. Comics will stretch into graphic content quite often when it comes to combat and death, but there have been a few occasions where they've taken dark storylines even further. There was the case of Elongated Man's wife, Sue Dibney, and her encounter with Dr. Light. No one remembered this because their minds had been erased through the means of magic, but eventually it all came to the surface that Dr. Light had violated Elongated Man's wife, Sue Dibney. The reason that everyone finds out about this is because Sue Dibney was actually murdered, and the investigation of her murder is what revealed all these horrible acts.
Number 2. Killing Rachel. My favorite portrayal of the Joker is still Heath Ledger's. Now, I love the other versions, but after seeing this movie when I was younger and seeing Heath's performance for the first time, it was just surreal. One of the most shocking moments from that movie was when he made Batman choose between saving Harvey Dent or Rachel. And I, of course, had to include this in our list. This is a great moment. The build up to the scene and the character choices that Heath made to express the insanity of the Joker, so good. The scene, of course, doesn't end on a happy note. As we all remember, Rachel gets blown away to smithereens and Harvey starts to mentally decline after her loss, thus becoming the notorious Two-Face. And finally, number 1, the Joker breaks his own spine. Excuse me? Ever lean back in your chair at work and you kind of give it a bit too much? Ooh, gives you quite a oh my god feeling. It's not pleasant. Well, in the 1986 The Dark Knight Returns, we find Joker and Batman hashing it out. So while Batman is kicking his ass, he explains to him how many people he's let die simply by just not killing the Joker. I never kept count of them, says the Joker, and Batman responds simply with, I did. So Joker begins to stab Batman, and Batman twists Joker's neck. He's still alive enough to taunt Batman, still somehow. Come on, finish me, he begs. Batman doesn't budge. So Joker decides, you know what, he's done enough. So the Joker decides to twist his own neck so hard, making it so that he himself has the final blow, thus now making Batman a killer.
Number 10. Green Lantern film. One of the first steps taken towards creating a cinematic portion of the DCEU was the Green Lantern film that came out of 2012, starring Ryan Reynolds. Well, he may now have landed the perfect role for himself playing fellow Canadian Marvel's Deadpool. This foray into the world of superhero movies was exactly the opposite of that success, a complete flop, and is widely regarded as a bad decision, a bad move. Most of the problems behind this film boiled down to a lot of clashing of taste when it came to the creatives involved in the film's production, and a ton of really bad CGI. Like, if you don't believe me that it's bad, go back and watch it. On the other hand, I just watched the first Toy Story again today, and that is still amazing. Number 9. Fires Gail Simone. Remember when DC fired famed comic book writer Gail Simone from her most popular book, Batgirl? Yeah, that happened. And though DC later welcomed her back and Simone herself has never really spoken ill of what happened, fans at the time were pretty outraged. Batgirl herself was ranked number 36 for sales when compared with overall comic book sales. And yeah, that ranking includes titles outside of DC. That's overall. DC reportedly fired her via email, and fans weren't just outraged because of this one time, but because DC actually had a history of pulling Simone from titles without any apparent regard for story arc trajectory and without respect really for her work. So this was like one of those final straws that seemed to break a lot of people's backs. Number 8. Denies Batwoman marriage. While Batwoman may now be married, there was a time when DC actually said no to that idea. After Batwoman reappeared in the New 52 as the bold and new Kat Kane, who was kicked out from the military because she was a lesbian, Batwoman became more popular than ever. A big part of this actually had to do with the creative team for her series, J.H. William III and W. Hayden Blackman. She was well written, well drawn, and killing it. Her series blew up and her fan base saw a dramatic increase in numbers. People were loving this new Batwoman. Things were heating up for her romantically as well, and the plan was for her to get married to her fiance Maggie Sawyer. The two were supposed to have a wedding and tie the knot. Unfortunately, at the last minute, DC said no. This prompted not only backlash from Batwoman fans, but from her creative team as well, who both responded by walking away from the book because of DC's refusal. Also, a lot of this backlash came from the fact that DC was doing this a lot to people at the time. Last minute, just telling creatives, actually, we're going to change directions. And creators were like ripping their hair out.
Number 7. White Knight. This is a fun one. Imagine if Joker was the good guy and Batman was the bad. Okay, well in Batman White Knight #1, released in December 2017, we get to see this. Written by Sean Murphy, this story finds Joker as the hero. And this Batman is reckless. He's destroying the city just to get close to him. Once Batman gets his hands on Joker, the Joker tricks Batman into drugging him so that he can be sane again, becoming Jack Napier. So the Joker at this point actually outsmarts Batman. Ooh! He uses legal knowledge to convince Jim Gordon to arrest him for all this crazy stuff that he's doing just to get to him. This same Joker was still after Batman, so he used the Mad Hatter's control device to do a lot of his dirty work. Nightwing and Batgirl even joined in on the cause to bring in the Caped Crusader. This is a great version of Joker to see. Reviews for the story have been mainly positive. What did you guys think? Let us know below.
Number 6. Batgirl cover art. Raphael Albuquerque was asked to create a variant cover for Batgirl issue 41 in 2015, and what he decided to create led to such an uproar that he chose to actually pull his variant following the astounding amount of backlash that it received from fans. The variant cover featured Joker with his arm draped across Batgirl's shoulders, one finger seemingly tracing a big red grin painted on her face, while in his other hand, he holds a gun. The cover and the outfit Joker is wearing evokes the officially non-canon and yet somewhat canon story of The Killing Joke, where Barbara Gordon was shot by the Joker and paralyzed, all in an attempt to drive her father, Commissioner Gordon, insane. In fact, Raphael did admit that that was where he got the inspiration from. After the variant's reveal, and after 4 days of constant complaints, DC announced the variant cover would be cancelled. And like I said, Albuquerque himself was the one that was like, it's fine, we'll just take that out. Oof, that was a rough one.
Coming at number 5, we have Jason Todd's death. If something like this happened today, it would for sure play out the same way because we know how the internet works, but I love this story because it just goes to show you how trolls have existed forever. When Jason Todd was brought into the fray as the new Robin, there came a time where he was kidnapped by the Joker, and DC Comics brought it to the fans to determine his fate. They would ask the public to vote on whether or not this child would die, and the fans voted yes. Wait, what? Yeah, dude, this is what happened. When you ask the public their opinion on something that doesn't really matter, they usually choose something like this. Like when that research vessel got named Bodie McBoatface. Well, I think the shocking part is that DC stuck true to the fans' vote and they killed off Jason Todd, who would later come back as the much cooler Red Hood.
Number 4, Batman Censored. When DC announced the Black Label imprint, they warned fans that it was going to be something different, even more edgy and more adult than their usual fare. In DC Black Label, it was promised nothing would be off the table. So when Batman Damned came out and featured one of the most famous characters out there, Batman in the nude, DC was a bit caught off guard when fans appeared shocked. They had warned them after all. In a frazzle to avoid the backlash that they were receiving from fans, subsequent prints censored Bruce Wayne's private parts. And DC hoped this would help to satisfy fans in regards to their initial outrage. However, this decision actually backfired on them, and they were even further criticized for not having the gall to stick with their initial decision, and giving in to those who had complained. So while some fans had actually complained about the nudity, it actually turned out there were even more who appreciated DC's boldness, and was sad when they stepped down from it.
Number 3, Joker kills the audience. Batman The Dark Knight Returns Part 2. So this moment mirrors what happened in the finale of the Joker movie, kinda. So Joker is invited on a talk show to get some insight behind his madness. Always a great idea. Let's get more of those guests on there. After being asked by the host why he's killed people, Joker explains how he's going to kill everybody in this room. And cue the panic laughs. Joker begins to explain that he thinks he's Batman's psychotic obsession. But then after asking about the lovely mugs that guests would get on these talk shows, the Joker goes, oh nice, breaks the mug and then stabs Dr. Bartholomew in the neck, who was aiding Joker for this interview. So it turns out the Joker was not that cured at all. And if that wasn't bad enough, he then murdered the entire audience with poisonous gas. Just a nice finishing touch. A+.
Number 2, Gotham High. You know it's gotten bad when the comments are turned off. That is what happened to the trailer for the new DC series, Gotham High. The creator herself, Melissa De La Cruz, has revealed that the purpose of the comic was to create a kind of Gossip Girl Batman. She goes on to state that she wanted to reinvent Chuck Bass, who to her is still Bruce Wayne, with all that iconic Batman personality. What is Batman personality? What does that mean? And yet, Cruz also reportedly confessed that she has little knowledge when it comes to the world of Batman comics, instead focusing on putting her own spin on the character she'd be writing. This has left so many fans worried about the series in regards to all of the dramatic changes that it poses to well-established characters and all the history and lore that they suspect it will completely disregard. And I mean, with DC characters, these characters are really well established. The trailer itself for Gotham High has already posed a love triangle involving Jack Napier, who I can only assume is the Joker, Selena Kyle, and the most richest and handsome guy at school, Bruce Wayne. Yikes. I am sensing some major Riverdale vibes with this one. And although I will admit I do watch Riverdale, that is a guilty pleasure of mine. It still is not great. It's not good. I'm not gonna lie. So I feel like this will be like that. Number 1, reboots on reboots. And yet not a reboot in sight. Get what I'm saying? You know what I mean? No one will know. I think it's a Canadian show, so Americans won't know what I'm talking about with reboot. DC has a huge and long history when it comes to their characters and the DC universe, but as comic publishers have struggled to stay afloat and hold on to sales, even DC felt the cold, icy breath of the Grim Reaper approaching. An attempt to drum up more sales and make their comics more widely accessible, this led to a relaunch of their main continuity and the New 52 was born. However, this attempt to garner the attention of new readers and increase sales ultimately failed, with the increase increase being much more minimal than DC had hoped. In the end, this led DC to ultimately abandoning the New 52 in order to relaunch and rebrand again only 4 years later with DCU in 2015, and then once again with DC Rebirth in 2016. Fast forward to 2020, where we are expected to see yet another soft relaunch with DC's 5G events. Of course, they don't want us to call it a reboot, but we're changing some of the continuity again, so and it's gonna be canon, I believe.